Hello, my name is Brian Robinson. I'm auditioning for Bob's Tours of Chicago, and here we go. Chicago's most defining moment is known as the natural disaster of the Great Chicago Fire. In 1871, from October 8th until October 10th, the city was set ablaze mysteriously by a fire. Many believe that it was the fault of one Mrs. O'Leary's cow that would go on to set the blaze. Later evidence proves that this is not true, or that it has been greatly exaggerated. One consequence of the fire was that a great swaths of the city were destroyed, and that many were left homeless. Approximately 300,000 people were left homeless due to the fire. And also, an unintended consequence of the fire was to destroy many of the wooden structures in the city. The city did see a birth and renewal in its construction through the construction of a new building, which is known as the skyscraper. The skyscraper was invented in Chicago during the late post-fire era of the city. The city did see some of the many great buildings built during this time, and of this time you see that skyscrapers were a fusion between the old and the new. Many of the buildings use a concrete and steel frame construction. Many of them were designed by Barnum and Ruth, architects that would go on to become famous in Chicago for their architecture and design. Much of the design of the city did see this birth and renewal of skyscrapers, and many of these buildings were continued to be built throughout the coming decades. One of the most famous buildings is the Private Life Insurance Building, which was designed in the 1880s, and also the Manhattan Building that was built in 1893 by many various architects. One of the great other defining moments of Chicago was the World's Fair of 1893, which would become known as the World's Columbus Expedition. This saw the coming out party of Chicago, and it also saw a great deal of the many architectural and designs of the city come forth as well. One of the great defining things that you see in the city today is that it is a grid and beautiful laid out pattern. Many of the inventions that came from the World's Fair were, in fact, still in common use today. One of these is the invention of and use of juicy fruit gum, Vienna sausages, and also Cracker Jack. Thank you. Bye. And thank you for coming on Bob's Tours.